Hi, everyone. On today's podcast, we are talking with Natalie Todd, who is a BCBA and school-based behavior consultant in New York State. Hi, Natalie. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you very much for having me.
We are happy to have you. We usually start with a little bit of an introduction. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you and what you currently do?
Okay. As you said, I'm a school-based behavior consultant in New York, and I currently work in an elementary school. I have worked in the past with students from kindergarten through 12th grade, that including up to age 21. So I did some transitioning students too into different placements. But right now, for the past few years, I've mainly been with elementary school students. And within that position, I do all the things that our school-based behavior consultants do. I do functional behavior assessments, I write behavior plans, I do some staff training, I work one-to-one direct services with some of the students, I do observations, and parent counseling and training as well.
I think it's so great that you're able to be in the school system. And, it's so nice to see that in certain districts, BCBAs can collaborate with the school system, because it shouldn't be about just, one-to-one ABA in some kid's basement or in a clinic somewhere. And then, okay, school, good luck, you're on your own, right? So I love the fact that you're there to be able to transition students successfully, but also to be able to train other professionals and collaborate with other professionals.
Yes, collaboration is definitely a big part of what I do on a daily basis. And that's one thing that I really love about, like you said, being in the school system. So I do spend significant amount of time finding out details about the students that we're working with by talking to OT, PT, speech, the school psychologist, the principal, the teachers, and the parents, of course, to just try to come up with all of the details in the background knowledge that I can. And then when we come up with an intervention plan, have it be a team-based approach so that the student gets the same response across all the settings in their day at school and across all the settings at home and hopefully in the community, provided the parents and even the aftercare staff, everyone that's involved with that student can continue with a consistent approach. So we have the best outcome possible.
Oh my gosh, it sounds so wonderful. Like that's a utopian society, right? When everybody's listening to everybody else and everyone's collaborative approach and you're following through, and it's just going from school to daycare or aftercare to home and vice versa. Oh, it sounds amazing. I guess the loaded question is, how often does that actually happen that way, right?
Well, that's the trick. I mean, I feel fortunate in that the staff that I work with is very supportive for as a whole, but there are always those times when there are bumps in the road and when there's a gap in that delivery of the service. So it is challenging. That is one of the challenges that I and every other behavior analyst that works in a school system has to face. And so again, it all goes back to trying to communicate with all of those team members and try to get buy-in. And so as we know, as behavior analysts, you're not only working with the student. So sometimes you have to work with a little other approaches with other people to try to help them understand and understand why they might be having difficulty with this approach. And it's never perfect, but we try to get as close as we can and monitor that and take the data. And if it isn't working, come up with something else.
So I love the intersection of like ABA and education. I'm also a BCBA in a school, probably different than New York State, public board. But I love when they can overlap and really complement each other. We also collaborate with lots of other professionals, and there's other therapists and everybody involved. I also know that a lot of our members in our audience are in a position where they've just been hired as BCBAs for a school system, and they feel really overwhelmed. A lot of them come to us and say, like, I'm the only BCBA in my district. I do not know what to do. Can you give us maybe an example of like a challenge that you have or that you've had in this kind of setting, and how you kind of overcome that? Because I know that there's a lot, just with the system being what it is, a lot of, red tape and issues and challenges where what you're describing sounds great, but in reality is very hard to accomplish. So can you give us an example like that?
Sure. I think one of the biggest challenges I have on a day-to-day basis is scheduling, because there are so many demands, there are so many students, and you have, the students with the highest level of need that are really struggling and their behaviors are really causing a barrier to their learning and being disruptive to other students. So of course they demand so much of your time on a daily basis, but they're not the only students that you need to tend to as the behavior consultant for the whole building. And I'm, I guess, fortunate because it's only one building that I am involved with. Many people in my role bounce from building to building, and I have in the past, but currently, even so, it's hard to tend to, we all have our ideal schedule in the morning of this is the mandate, and these are all the students that I need to see today. And then Johnny has a meltdown, so that takes half of your day that you hadn't planned on. So I think that is one of the biggest challenges that I face on a day-to-day basis. And so, luckily, you try to train the staff, show them the interventions, whatever it might be, to try to help that student through that time. And they get better as the year goes on. I find that the staff gets better at managing some of that for you so that it doesn't take up half of your day. But still, that's the balance. That's the biggest challenge that I find. I feel that it's hard to spread yourself around the building and to be able to really tend to the students that aren't really the highest level of need, because obviously, in all fairness, everybody needs your support.
Oh yeah. I mean, Shayna and I were meeting today and I was like, trying to help them at school manage the kid, because like I'm not working today, and it's constant. Like you're spreading yourself very thin and you always want to be everywhere all the time. But at the same time, you have to empower the people who are there to be able to have the tools to work with them, because they're, the ones on the ground, and you're not always going to be available to jump in. So it's kind of that balance of like training and support, but also being able to be there and directly provide that support.
Right. And that transfer of when you're training staff and implementing the plan, having the student learn from you and having the staff watch that transpire, so then you can feed your direct service to one of the many people that are in place to try to bridge that gap. And that's challenging. That's hard.
Do you find like any pushback from, you work with so many different people, and you mentioned mental health and therapists and teachers. Do you find any pushback against like, oh, that's ABA, like I don't do that, or I'm not bought into this system yet? And how do you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, not as candidly as you just pointed out. I haven't experienced that in my recent work with a provider or another staff member, just being that direct about it. But, not everybody is that direct. So it's there for sure. And you can sense when someone isn't really buying into your program. So what I've done in the past to try to work through that is to just give like a time limit on what I'm asking of that staff. So I'll say, can we just try this for, say, 2 weeks? And I sense that, you have some doubts, but let's just try it for a little while. Be meticulous about your data collection, if you will, and then let's see. We'll check in, we'll monitor it carefully, and if we see improvement, then maybe you can help me out and stick with it. But if we don't, then we'll revisit the situation and strategize together to come up with something different. So I feel like if you go in with that approach, you have a much higher likelihood of getting that buy-in.
I like that. The time limit is also, you said that a few times, we're in this together. Let's strategize together. We're a team. It's not about my way or the highway. As much as I'd love to say, oh, well, BCBAs, we know everything, we're the best. We're not. We don't know everything. And oftentimes, we go in with, our bag of tricks, but somebody else's bag of tricks can be, just as unique as ours. And those approaches work as well. So it's really great that, you can say, no, we're all in this together. Let's listen to each other and do.
Yeah, I mean, if the outcome is obviously a good outcome is the goal for all of us, right?
Huge.
And so if you come in with an attitude that like we know everything and our ways are best, then for that moment that you're in the room, things might be going along well, but as soon as you turn around, it might be in the round file.
That's it. And you know what, every student is unique, but every classroom is unique as well. And, a classroom isn't just made up of one individual. So you may suggest some really amazing strategies for one individual, but it's unrealistic to be able to carry those through if there's 20 or 30 kids in the class.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. I love the idea of giving it, a bit of a deadline. And let's do this for 2 weeks. Like you can do anything for 2 weeks as long as they know that it's not going to be forever. Yes. I know that even since I started working in a school, so much has changed. Like the way that we manage kids, the way that we, work with a classroom, or especially with challenging behavior. And so much is continuing to change with behavior analysis and the field of ABA. Tell us some things that like you're excited about that are changing or that you're starting to use and implement in your role.
Sure. Well, attending this conference was very exciting for me and validating because there was so much discussion on trauma-informed care and compassionate care. And I know there's many podcasts and many people in our field that are leaders that are really becoming more aware and sensitive to those parts of a human that really need to be tended to when you're designing and implementing a behavior analytic plan. And so I feel like merging all of those different lenses is a good direction to start to think about, and it goes back to the collaboration piece. I feel like just that awareness and back in the day, behavior analysts weren't trained to really be trauma-informed and compassionate awareness care. So I feel that is a trend that's kind of going on now that I think is really a good direction for us to be going in.
Absolutely. And let's hope it's not just a trend. It's a trend in the right direction, but let's hope that this keeps going and keeps going further.
Yes, I agree. I think it makes a big difference in the way that we can treat people effectively in terms of behavior change. Right? You need to really think of the whole person.
Absolutely. We talk about this whole extinction, and just put the behavior on extinction. You don't ignore the individual, but you do ignore the behavior. And even that trend, it's like, it's not applicable anymore. We don't do extinction based. We shouldn't be doing it anyways. And it should be, really about, okay, let's look at, is there previous trauma? How can we be compassionate and start to label things for individuals, right? So, I know you feel, or it sounds like you feel this way, or I know you want this, and actually labeling the behavior they're engaging in and why they're doing it. And, we've started to do that. And the more and more I do it, you can see that de-escalation in that moment, right? And then we're not teaching in the moment. We can label the behavior in the moment, but, that's not the moment to teach.
Right. And hopefully that almost scripting the language like that will help with functional communication training. So if that individual hears you labeling their feelings or their behavior or whatever it is, that leads into the whole functional communication piece. And so it's modeling communication for them.
Imagine we're behavior analysts and we're talking about feelings. What's going on?
Whoa, it's getting murky.
And you mentioned, the skills-based treatment. And I know Hanley's making a ton of headway into this area of giving kids the skills to tolerate waiting, tolerate denial, those kind of things. I'd love to hear how you incorporate that into the school setting.
Okay, well, that's part of it. The whole concept that we're talking about now too, and really not just discovering the function of the behavior, but what is that individual missing? What are the skills that they are missing that is causing the behavior to occur? So, for example, I have recently implemented an elopement plan for a student that was struggling with elopement. So it was playground situations that were most triggering for the student. So during recess, many times he would leave. So he would try to run home. So I did the FBA, and that determined the escape maintain behavior. I, working with him, determined that his skill set that he was missing was really those whole social skills. So, listening to other students, tolerating, sharing, communicating what his feelings were. So all of those skills he was missing, conflict resolution. So I gathered a bunch of different ways to teach the student all that and use time during his lunch to practice, model, reinforce all of those skills, and then systematically reintroduced him to the recess, starting with the last 10 minutes. So we practice, took him out there, heavily supported during the recess just for the last 10 minutes because the transitions were hard too. So I wanted him to come in with the class. So during those 10 minutes, if I could see that someone was going to trigger him on the playground, even if someone crashed into the student, he just would run. He didn't have the skills, and he's a high functioning individual. He has very good verbal skills, but just in that moment, he wasn't able to express himself. He would just run. So we staged it. We contrived situations. We practiced it in little tiny increments. Every time he used any of the skills that we covered, we'd reinforce, and then slowly increase the duration of time that he was able to be outside with recess with 0 elopement events, and he was successful. So it took a while. It wasn't flawless.
Right.
Yeah.
That's an awesome example. I mean, just like when you have a child who can't read yet and you keep giving them the same book and they can't read the book, and you give them the book and they can't read the book. Instead, we don't really do that. What do? We start with identifying the letters and teaching them the letter sounds and then putting the letters together. And it's the same thing with behavioral skills, right? We're trying to figure out there's something missing here. We can't just keep presenting the same book if they can't read it, or the same situation if they can't handle it. And so break that down and what skills are missing and what do we need to teach them, and teach it at a separate time. I love that you taught it not during recess, but you taught it at a separate time so that you can work on those skills and build them up and reinforce them, and then start to generalize it to the actual situation that is most triggering.
Right. Yes. So that, that was one example of using the skills-based training to help a student do that and reinforcing it. So that in my lens is kind of extending the whole approach, so you're not just saying, do this, do this, do this, do this. You're teaching them how to do it based upon what the skills are that they're missing.
And then it's not a Band-Aid approach either. It's, hey, you know what? I've taught you how to do this. So now that you can do it, you can always do this. So it's more of getting to the root of the behavioral issue and being able to teach that so that it doesn't happen again. Because oftentimes I call it old ABA and new ABA, right? But with the old ABA, when you're, trying to treat a symptom, you're sure you might put a Band-Aid on that symptom, but something else then pops up instead.
Right. Yes, exactly.
And one of the challenges I used to work, I got into ABA for many years being in kids' homes. And so I would feel very involved with the whole family and I would get to know them and we would kind of work together as a team. And it really felt like that. And sometimes when I work in a school, it feels like parents are kind of, separate unless we're constantly reaching out. There's kind of that disconnect between what we're working on at school, between that follow through at home and parents kind of being on the same page and using those strategies. Do you find the same thing? And do you have any, tips for that?
I do. I do a lot of parent training, and, like anything else, some situations and relationships that I have with the parents are more successful than others. So it's just some parents are more open. And one thing I don't like is that term. I don't like that it's called parent training.
Me too. That's why I never use it. And so I just find myself never offering it.
It seems like you're out of the gate assuming that parent doesn't know how to do anything. So I feel like we need to come up with a better term for it.
Parent coaching, parent.
I know, but even coaching, it's I'm not a coach. Right. You're a parent, I'm a parent. Let's just figure this out.
You're the expert in your own kid. I don't need to train you on your kid.
Right. Yeah. So, just having that in mind. And I've even used that when I know that I've tried to schedule the parent training numerous times and the parent hasn't called back and it's tough to even connect with them to get to speak with them. I wonder if that's part of the reason why. It just seems aversive. It's if the whole approach seems aversive. So again, you're using behavior analysis to try to help the parents understand why I'm here, what I'm here for, and how can I help you. So I think going in with that approach and being able to explain that out of the gate is very helpful. And just being honest about my feelings of that term, I think is a good icebreaker. And then go into what are your challenges that you see at home, and how are they similar to what we have in school. Sometimes they're very similar. Sometimes, as we all know, with behavioral contrast, it doesn't happen in one setting, but it does happen in the other. And I've had students with both, where the parents call and say, I can't manage his behavior. He's having such a difficult time. He doesn't comply with anything. He's running around. He's having tantrums. And in school, he's this little angel that really doesn't present with any of those behaviors at all. And of course, vice versa. So I think just getting on the same page with the parent, coming in with an approach that we're again on the same team. We're trying to help. It's not that I'm training you. I'm just trying to help in any way that I can, teach you what strategies we're using in school. And then if you need them in the home setting, to use the same or similar approaches so that the student has that consistency between home and school, so that we can have the best outcome. So I think if you explain it like that, you're again more likely to get buy-in.
So it kind of leads into my next question. I wanted to talk about something that you would still change about the field. We have come so far, and there's a lot that we do with, compassionate care and collaboration and all of that. But what we still have a ways to go. Is there something that you would change? Would it be this? Would it be, changing how we approach parent training, coaching?
Yes. I mean, that obviously, those are some things that I would change about behavior analysis now. And, just to keep reflecting on the progress that we've made, and how can we continue on that trajectory, on that path? In what ways can we continue to increase the collaboration that we have, and kind of, I guess, smooth out some of the past ineffective ways that things have occurred in behavior analysis, and change, and try to move it forward from there.
Yes, we have a reputation to fix.
Yeah. And, I think there are so many good things about behavior analysis. Obviously, we're all in it, and we know that it's effective, and we're in it for the reasons to change lives for the better if we can, and to try to improve the lives of people that are growing. So it's not, I don't want it to seem as though we have to change everything, because we don't. There's a lot of really great things about behavior analysis, and we're all in it together. And like we said, with parents, with students, with administrators, within the home setting. I do really love working in the school setting. I think that we could expand upon behavior analysis in more of like a medical component, and having behavior analysis available in pediatrics. So I feel many pediatricians see patients for issues that are behaviorally oriented, that can be supported with behavior interventions. And I feel that is another area in which we can expand. So, for example, bedwetting or things like that, where a mom or dad would take their child to the pediatrician, of course, the medical doctor would do his examination, and based on the physiological components of an individual, then determine that it's behavioral, and be able to refer parents for that support. And I don't think that is really something that is done as much as it could be.
Such a great idea. So many people jump to medication, right?
Yeah.
Bedwetting is one example, but then there's sleeping, there's eating, there's a bunch of different things that may actually be a behavioral issue. As much as behaviorists say, okay, the first thing that needs to be done is medical, making sure that there's medical check, you're right. Pediatricians also need to say, hey, there's this field out there that, we could probably reduce some of the medications.
Yes. I think that's something that we could get better at. Really.
If there's one thing that I would change about the field, it's always like getting better at being in the schools. And I think that's why I love having these kind of conversations, because I think that if we could do better in working with the people that, educate our kids for, 18 to 21 years, then we're better at collaborating with them, and we're better at supporting them. I think our kids would be better off.
Right.
I love that.
I do. And that's coming. That's coming up. I think,
hopefully.
More and more, I see it expanding, at least in New York. I do see a lot more school-based behavior analysts.
Mm-hmm. I'm seeing it more too. I mean, I've been in the field for 20 plus years and, same thing, I'm seeing it way more than we used to. So it's definitely moving in the right direction.
Yes.
So our audience, we get a lot of newly minted BCBAs or ABA professionals. Do you have any advice for those people who are just starting out in this ABA profession?
I would say to ask a lot of questions with your whomever you're working with, whatever capacity. So whether it's in a school, whether it's in a home, if it's with an agency. I was fortunate when I was first starting to have kind of a group of BCBAs that we're also just starting out. So, and we still are very close. So to have that collaboration, and we don't all work in the same school, we don't all work in, the same capacity completely with the same age students. So we have different capacities in which we work, but there's always someone there to reach out. Hey, have you guys ever done this? Have you guys ever done that? What do you do here? So to ask a lot of questions and to reach out to other groups, like Facebook has a lot of great behavior analysis groups. And even when I was going through all of my testing and the last part of my coursework, to be able to have that resource to just ask questions to people who are in a similar situation and be able to get an answer is crucial. I think you have to put yourself out there and talk to other behavior and analysts in the field. And don't be afraid to ask a question that you think might be stupid, because it's probably not.
Do you have any favorite go-to ABA resources, like books that you relied on or courses that you loved?
Well, behavior analysis for lasting change was one of my texts, and that I have pulled out and referred to many times for sure. I also used a parent training curriculum that was fantastic. That I was one of my go-tos as well, and I can get the name of that for the show notes. But that was a really good resource to have.
Was that Ruby? The Ruby training?
Yes, Ruby Autism Network. Yep.
Yes, it's fabulous.
Yeah.
It's great. It's very straightforward, and I heard about that at one of the first conferences that I went to, and I bought the book, and I was so excited about it, and I shared it with a bunch of people that I was working with at the time, and I still refer to that quite often because you can break it down into those modules, and so parents who don't have a lot of background knowledge and how a lot of just the basic principles work can really get a lot out of that. So that's one of my go-tos. And then there are several podcasts that I listen to on a daily basis because I do have a bit of a commute. So I have some car time that I do. I listen to ABA Inside Track. I listen to behavioral observations, and of course, How to ABA.
Of course, How to ABA.
So those are like some of my go-tos, and it's great to have podcasts as a resource too, because whatever topic you're trying to figure more out about, you can kind of skim through, put it in, and listen to it for a while too. And I do, of course, do a lot of research in the BACB website that has all of the journal articles that you can refer to. So that's a big go-to for me as well. That's a great resource.
I think the idea is that every client is different, but we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like there is what to rely on. There's lots of information out there, whether it's like a parent training curriculum or podcast, and just like being receptive to everything that's available and reaching out and having that community to like support you.
Absolutely. Yes.
I was just going to say, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Like, this is a great conversation, and it was really nice to meet you back at ABAI, and nice to see you again.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I was very fortunate to meet you there and fortunate to be there. And thank you for having me.